Nau mai haere mai, ki tēnei zui mō Newtown to City, me Botanic Gardens ki Paekākā to City. Welcome to this evening's webinar on the Newtown to City and Botanic Garden ki Paekākā to City routes. Ko Georgia Hallie aho. I work in the Climate Change Response Business Unit here at WCC, and I'm delighted to be your MC and host this evening. We'll open with the karakia whakataka te hau to prepare and settle us for our evening ahead. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te taonga, ki mā kina kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. E he aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. I appreciate that there are a lot of demands on our time at the moment, and so I just want to begin by acknowledging you all for taking the time to come along to our session this evening. I really hope that you get what you came for and that you learn something new about these two exciting new projects. I would also like to take some time to acknowledge the councillors who have registered and some who may be turning up later on because they're in a district plan meeting until 8 p.m. Councillor Foon, Councillor Day, Councillor Fitzsimmons and Councillor Young. I would also like to acknowledge Councillor Pannett as the chair of Pūroro Amua, the Planning and Environment Committee, who can't be here this evening. So we're going to begin by just doing a couple of very quick polls to better understand how you relate to these projects. You should see a poll box popping up on your screen now. So if you can look at those options and choose the option that best describes your relationships to the projects, and then submit. Maybe hard to choose just one, but let's take a shot. Cool, we've got a lot of results coming through. We'll just leave it for about another 30 seconds. All right, final moments. Great. All right, so the results. Looks like 38% of you regularly travel through one of the routes. 20% of you live nearby in the surrounding area. 14% of you live on one of the routes. 12% of you work, manage or own a business on the route, and 3% of you work, manage or own a business nearby in the surrounding area. That's really exciting. It's cool to see such a range of people that we have here. Now, just very quickly, we're going to do one other little poll to get a sense of how you're feeling about the projects. And we want to do that just based on your current knowledge of the projects. So if you can please just choose the number that best corresponds to how you're feeling about them. Obviously, 1 is not very excited at all, and 5 is struggling to breathe through the excitement. Cool, great to see results coming through. All right, maybe we'll end poll there. Cool, so that's pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about these results because there's a lot of excitement in the room, which is always exciting. 51% of you are very excited, just get on with it. 12% of you are middling, a little bit excited, but not quite at maximum excitement. 18% not sure, keen to know more. 4% a little unsure and a little bit more cautious, and then 15% concerned and not looking forward to the changes. Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do those 2 little polls. That's really good. It just gives us a bit of a sense of how to move forward with this evening. Now let's kick into it. All right, last year the council heard a clear directive from the community to accelerate the bike network. We're now 10 months in and we've made good progress on our first 2 critical routes. We're getting close to implementing them, and so we wanted to brief you before work start on what's been done to date and where to from here. The purpose of this session is to share information about the projects, explain when to give feedback and how to stay in touch, and of course, to answer your questions. We'll be answering questions that were lodged with the registrations, as well as questions that are lodged throughout tonight's session. We have a team of dedicated people working hard behind the scenes to manage your questions. They'll be putting some of the questions to the panel and will be typing answers to others. We've had a plethora of questions come through with the registrations, and no doubt we will get a heap more throughout the session. Just want to acknowledge that we'll do our very best to answer as many questions as possible tonight, but also highlight that if you ask a question this evening and it does not get answered, please don't give up. Please make sure you contact us with your question at info@wcc.govt.nz. So during the session, you can lodge your questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. All right, the agenda for this evening. So first, we are going to hear a brief pre-recorded message from Mayor Foster, who would have loved to have been here this evening but couldn't make it. Then we'll be hearing from Vida Christeller, the Manager of City Design at Wellington City Council, and Renee Corlett, the Project Manager of these two projects. After this, we'll bring in the panel for our Q&A session, which will include Charlene Hannon, Project Manager from Let's Get Wellington Moving, and Hugh Wilson, Principal Advisor in the Transitional Team at Wellington City Council. All right, let's get going with the pre-recorded message from the Mayor.
Tēnā koutou katoa and good evening. I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar to discuss two transitional cycleways from Newtown to the city and the Botanic Garden's key Paekākā to the city. Look, our city is growing. We're expecting to have 30,000 more people living centrally and 50 to 80,000 people across the city as a whole over the next 30 years. We're also conscious of our need to reduce our impact on the climate, to reduce carbon emissions. All of this means that we need more people who are walking, cycling and using public transport. We have heard the message loud and clear that we need better, safer cycling across the city. And as part of that, sometimes we decide not to build things in concrete, but to build things in a way in which we can adapt them. We can respond to changes, we can respond to ideas of what worked and what didn't work. And that's exactly what these transitional cycleways are doing. It gives us the opportunity to respond to you and to your use of those and your ideas about your use of those, the things that worked, the things that didn't, and to make changes as we go before we make them permanent. So I hope that you enjoy and find this a really useful webinar and you're able to give us feedback on your use, your experience of these two transitional cycleways as we help to transform our city into a sustainable, carbon zero city over the next 20 or 30 years. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you for that, Mayor Foster. I now invite Vida Christeller to join us. Vida is just going to speak about why these routes are an important part of our city growing. Thanks, Vida.
Kia ora, Georgia, and kia ora koutou. Great to have you all here this evening, and as Georgia acknowledged at the start, thank you very much for taking the time to come, and we hope to be able to answer all your questions this evening. I want to start at a little bit more of a helicopter level and talk about how we've gotten to where we are today. As the Mayor introduced, the Council has a clear vision for the city, and this vision includes a safer, connected bike network. Through the long-term plan, the why was set with funding the acceleration of the bike network over the next 10 years at 226 million. My team then presented in August how we were going to deliver that and proposed a new way of working to accelerate, which is this transitional program. In November and December, we consulted on Paekākā, our bike network plan, which sets out where we're going to go and changes from a London Underground style master plan to specific streets being identified that connect our city. If we can change, and so now we're moving on with these next two projects which deliver the Paekākā plan. All of this is sitting at this higher level as I talk about in 2019, Council declared a climate and ecological emergency, and there's also a well-acknowledged housing crisis in the city. We know that 90% of Wellingtonians have told us they want to see action on climate change, and that 34% of our emissions come from our transport network. So delivering safe and connected bike lanes enables Wellingtonians to choose safe, fast, healthy, and low carbon travel options. The housing crisis, through Planning for Growth, we have had extensive consultation since 2017, which has directed that the city grow and densify in the central city and in the suburban centres, really taking advantage of our topography and keeping the city dense, walkable, and the city that we know. And to add to that, I guess it's also the current debate around the cost of living and how creating travel choice will also help address that. Through the consultation on the bike network plan, we did that together with Let's Get Wellington Moving and the draft district plan. It was really important to bring all of these three consultations together as they create the strategic direction for the city. We have traditionally worked in the greyed out area to the right on the sheet here. It's more about we've consulted and looked at plans and designed these street transformations in detail. What we're moving to is to make this transition faster. We are looking at bringing in temporary solutions or more tactical solutions where we are reassigning space on our streets to enable people to move around differently, and then consulting and understanding lived experience of these changes, as well as collecting data so that we can inform permanent street transformations, which will come at a later stage. If we could change, please. Back in August last year, when we first went back to council and talked about how we were going to be delivering these projects differently, we also talked to our councillors about how we prioritise the bike network principles. All of these principles are really important for creating the connected network across the whole city. But as we accelerate through the transitional program, what we've focused on is, we were told by our councillors, was safety was a non-negotiable. That was one thing that we had to make sure that was happening, so it isn't put on these slides, and is something that we will always look for, and that's for all modes. But really we're asked to focus on the two principles on the left to maximise uptake and create a cohesive network of routes to get people where they want to go. Next slide, please, Ollie. So we know as well, we've already been out and we've begun this consultation with the transitional bike routes. What we are looking at is that we have a pre-implementation engagement with the key stakeholders. So this is our emergency services, Metlink, key interest groups, and of course local businesses along the route, and residents and property owners. That has just started on these first two routes. We presented the plans to councillors about 2.5 weeks ago, and the next day we made these designs live. Some of the things that we're hearing already is, there is excitement and support. There's been a clear message, as Mayor also mentioned, around getting on with it and changing the way and ensuring that everybody can get around the city as they choose, and encouraging low carbon options. But we also acknowledge that there are concerns as it does require changing status quo, and we are going to have to reprioritise how our street space is used, especially on the key artillery routes into the city, where we are going to have to remove parking, but are also looking at how do we support the life and along these streets. So, for example, at the North Ridderford business, the shop centre there, we've been working with local businesses trying to understand how we especially work around the loading zone, which will need to move, but looking at options for ensuring that they can continue to have all of their wares and goods delivered. And we're really lucky also to have a great working really well with the hospital, who are looking at how we can help them make sure that people get to their appointments on time, choose active modes. And with the Children's Hospital opening in a few months, there's also going to be additional car parking and 20-minute free car parking just around the corner from these shops. So that's a really great win-win situation there. One of the things that we know, and we've been talking about this very closely with councillors, but also in our own team, and also everybody in the community, as we change the city, we know that there is a really emotional journey that we all go through. And what my team are here for, and what we're trying to do, is one, of course, deliver this infrastructure, but secondly, also build this bridge that you can see in this diagram. We want to help people move from the idea into the reality, from the vision and the strategy into actual change in the city. And if we can help people keep out of the dark swamp of despair, that's a real key success for us. So working, as we said, with key stakeholders, ensuring that the information they're collecting, the data, is going to be key, and getting out and talking to the community through the trials. So I guess one of the things I just wanted to lift up again, we're really excited about these first 2 trials. And interested in the feedback we get through the consultation and your lived experience as they get on the ground. Renee will talk more about the designs in a minute. Our main focus is, as I said, building these bridges and helping people and making sure that the city continues to function, and that as the city grows, that we can help alleviate congestion. And then the last thing I really wanted to lift up again, up to the top, and just recap of what I've talked about. So we've got a really clear why, climate change and the housing crisis. The what, so delivering a bike network, was decided through the long-term plan. Where was locked in with the bike network plan, which was approved last week, saying which streets they were. And now we're moving on to this next step, which is on each individual route, talking to you, the community, and people that are using it, to understand how we do it on each street, and what good looks like for the city that the councillors have created a vision for the future. So thank you. And I'll hand over to Renee.
That's awesome. Thanks, Vida. That paints a really clear picture. And now I invite Renee Corlett, the project manager for the 2 projects, to come on board, and she's going to talk us through some of the exciting details of the projects. Kia ora, Renee.
Kia ora. Thank you, Georgia and Vida, and for everyone for coming here tonight. Yeah, I'm excited to share with you the details of these 2 routes. So the first 2 routes that we are proceeding with the transitional cycleways is the Botanic Gardens, ki Paekākā to the city, and Newtown to the city. The reason we have decided to start with these 2 routes is their critical connections to the south and the west. So these are large population areas, especially Newtown, which is one of the fastest growing areas within Wellington. So there's significant numbers of people on bikes and buses who are currently using these routes. These routes are also both part of Let's Get Wellington Moving plans for the future. So what we're going to do is, by putting in these transitional cycleways, we're going to be able to get the benefits in the next few years while Let's Get Wellington Moving is developing their business cases, and the lessons and the information we can learn through these implementations will be able to feed into those permanent designs and what is coming in the future. So the current situation on these streets is less than ideal, as we can see in these images here. So there is no cycling facilities at the moment. And there is still around 430 people who are using the Botanic Garden, ki Paekākā to city route, and 970 using the Newtown to city. We have done a survey initially, and we have heard from Wellingtonians that around 60 to 70% of people agree that these streets don't provide for active modes of transport at the moment. And therefore, it's really important that we get in there and we make some changes as fast as possible, so that we can increase the uptake of cyclists using these routes, and the people who are there have better facilities in place. So in Throughout this process, we have been doing fast-paced collaborative design. So we've been working with lots of our key stakeholders, such as Waka Kotahi, Metlink, Let's Go Into Moving, Accessibility, and walking and cycling groups, alongside engaging with emergency services and taxi drivers. So throughout this process, we've had over 1,000 pieces of feedback that we've been able to implement into the design and use to figure out the best solutions for these routes, and especially with some of the trickier design elements that we've come across. So I'll run through the Botanic Garden Ki Paekākā to City route first, and what we're looking to be implementing. So first of all, we're going to be doing implementing some pedestrian improvements at the Terrace Bond intersection. So this is part of the Central City pedestrian improvements under Let's Get Wellington Moving. So as part of this, we'll be installing a new signalised crossing across Bowen Street from Parliament. We'll also be raising the existing pedestrian crossing along this route. Throughout the Bowen Street and Tinakori Road, what we have is going uphill, we have a separated cycle lane, and going downhill, there's going to be a shared bike lane. We would have loved to have a separated bike lane on both sides of the road going in each direction. However, due to the current road constraints, the width, there wasn't able to accommodate both of those. So we have decided to do the separated cycleway in the uphill direction due to the speed differentiation between the bikes and the vehicles. It is good for the cyclists going uphill to have that separated facility. However, when we get down to Whitmore Street, there is room to have the separated cycleways on both sides of the road. That section of the route, that we will be banning the right-hand turn into Stout Street. However, cyclists will still be able to make that turn. In order to implement this project, we will be removing the coupon parking spaces and existing clearways along this corridor. The taxi and short stay parking, however, will be relocated to Stout Street. So we'll just go through some images on just to really visualize what these changes are going to look like. So what we have now, you can see on the left, and what is coming soon. So like I said, the shared bike lane going downhill, then they've got the vehicle lane still. And then we also are implementing these new bus stop platforms. So these are made from recycled plastic, and it's this design here, which has the ramp, and then the cyclists will go across the platform and down the other side. There is the areas on either side for the pedestrians to still get safely on and off the buses, and then cross over onto the footpath. For Bowen Street, like I said, there's the shared bike lane going downhill and the separated uphill traffic lane alongside the two traffic lanes still in the middle. We have also identified cultural sites of significance along the route, and this is one of them where we are working with Mana Whenua on some placemaking and artwork opportunities, and these curb build-outs, which have also been implemented to slow traffic that is coming in and out of Ballantrae Place. On Whitmore Street, we have the separated cycle lanes on either side of the road against the curb, and then the traffic lanes. So for the Newtown to City route, what we have is separated cycle lanes on most of Ridderford Street with some shared city bus and bike lanes on the corner near John Street intersection, just due again to the road constraints. Our whole transitional project is within the existing corridor, so we're not moving curbs and things like that. So we're just working within the space we have, and reallocating it. Along Adelaide Road, we will have separated cycle lanes on each side of the road, and then full-time bus lanes also. We then go down to Cambridge Terrace and through the basin, and what we have there is a bi-directional cycleway. So there's the cycleway will be just on one side of the road going up against the median strip, with cyclists going in both directions. Then when you get down to the Courtney Place intersection, what will happen is we will be transitioning through separate signal phasing, cyclists over to the Kent Terrace side in front of the fire station, joining up to the waterfront. So along this whole route, there will be significant bus improvements with 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. bus lanes on Cambridge and Kent Terrace, and then the full-time bus lanes along Adelaide Road. There are also the new bus stop platforms that we have identified, shown you in the previous images. So it will be faster bus journeys. Again, the parking will be removed on Ridderford, Adelaide, and the eastern side of Cambridge Terrace and Lower Kent as part of this project. Again, just to visualize what's changing, this is outside the hospital. They have quite a few bus stops here, so we will be installing these bus platforms outside the hospital for people to still safely enter and exit the buses and then be able to cross the cycle lane onto the footpath. And then, as you can see on the other side, there is the separated cycle facility there. Along Adelaide Road, as you can see now, there's a big median strip in the middle of the road that will be removed to allow for the cycleway to be in place. So we will have separated cycle lanes on either side of the road, then the bus lane and then the traffic lanes. On Cambridge Terrace, like I was explaining before, we do have now bi-directional, so two-way cycle lane along the median strip against where the trees are there. We're closing those right-hand turns pockets that are currently there, and that is giving us reducing the conflict of any vehicles crossing the cycleway and giving us the placemaking and artwork opportunity. So we're looking at putting seats and furniture, bike racks, and working with mana whenua on how we can bring in some of the cultural elements into these areas. So like I said, in terms of those placemaking sites and throughout the routes, we're building partnerships with mana whenua and using the Let's Get Wellington Moving partnership group, where they have developed some of these values you can see here. And we continue to work with them on this greater narrative of the bike network plan and our transitional cycleway routes, and how these can be visualized in some of these places. So the installation of these projects is already started at some of our intersections. So the John Street intersection, of course, will be finished this week, and then some other sections on Adelaide Road. Once those enabling works has been completed, we'll be installing the full routes. That will go from April to around July, August. We're wishing to launch the Newtown route, and then we'll be starting the monitoring and evaluation. So that will be us really trying to get the community feedback on what's been installed, and then making any adaptations to the design once people have experienced it. For the Botanic Garden, ki Paekākā to City route, we'll be starting that after we've finished the Newtown. So that will begin around September. Some of these key intersection changes occurring before we go ahead and install the full route from September to November, launching that route hopefully by the end of the year, and then making some adjustments early next year. So how we're going to be rolling out the Newtown to City is, as you can see down the left, some of these key intersections are underway already. We're going to then start outside the hospital and work our way from April to May down to the basin. So that whole section will be complete before we then go on and start from the basin to the waterfront. So that will go ahead, and we will first start with some of those key intersections of the big blue dots from May to July, and then from July to August complete this route, and we'll have this whole route completed around August, and then the Botanic Garden to City route will come after. The date's still being confirmed. And just wanted to mention, we have had some delays in the program already due to COVID and the protests. So it is all indicative, but this is what we're looking to achieve at this stage and what's programmed. So how we'll be tracking success is through many KPIs and monitoring and evaluation of routes. So we're looking to do faster installation, more low carbon transport chips, increased diversity of users and giving feedback, and improved safety, actual and perceived. How we're planning to adapt. So once these routes are installed, we're really wanting to be able to get people's feedback and adapt in response to that. So we're going to, first of all, adapt and make changes to any immediate safety concerns, then any small changes, so like hit sticks that may be in the wrong place, or any road markings that people have opinions on. And then we're going to be carrying out a public survey where we'll gather larger amounts of feedback and make comfort and experience improvements. So they may be changes to signs, parking, road markings, and hit sticks. And then what can't necessarily be addressed throughout that process will be passing on to be installed or investigated under the traffic resolutions and the permanent changes that will be coming under Let's Get Wellington Moving. So yeah, what can't necessarily be achieved in the transitional project, that feedback will be taken on board to be put in the permanent design. So we'll be testing how the changes are working, not if they need to happen at all. So like I have said, we're at the design and install stage. So we are just trying to get the cycleways in the ground at the moment, and over the next few months, you'll see these changes starting to occur. Then what we're really wanting is everyone to experience these changes. And it's not just cyclists, it's people on scooters and bikes and pedestrians, bus passengers, people in cars and loading, and just anyone who's using the roading network. We want everyone to experience these changes, how it impacts you, and then tell us what you think. So if you go to transportprojects.org.nz, you can give us that feedback there. And we'll have the public survey open as well, and hopefully, if depending on COVID, be on the ground to collect that feedback from people on site as well. And then based on that, we'll be adapting and making any changes, and based on that feedback. Yes, we really look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts and for these to be in the ground as soon as possible. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks, Renee, for that presentation. Hopefully that was some good information for people who were looking for a bit more about the routes. Now I can see that we've had a lot of questions logged throughout the presentation so far, so I'm just going to bring in the panel and we'll get straight into those questions. We're just inviting Charlene Hannon, Hugh Wilson, Vida Christeller and Renee Corlett on, please. All right, here we go. So we've got a question here from Nikki, who's asking if we can provide an update on what is being done to resolve the city traffic congestion in relevance to the cycleway. Vida, I'll put that question to you.
Yes, sure. So the others chip in if you've got anything to add. But as the city does grow, we're expecting, as the Mayor mentioned, 50 to 80,000 new Wellingtonians to call the city home in the next 30 years. And our city, as it is designed, we've got a great topography. What we love, we've got the harbour and the hills, but it also creates reasonably narrow roads. And so as we grow, we need to make sure that we're moving more people with fewer vehicles. And to do that, we need to make sure that there's options and there's transport choice. So that's what these projects are really about. We want to make sure that those that need to drive, that there's still space for them and that they can keep our city humming. So our delivery vehicles, our emergency services and others. But to do that, we need to also make sure that other people have safe, convenient and great options for choosing something else. So that's our approach. And we're also with Let's Get Wellington Moving, and Charlene may want to add something here, but you know, we're with the mass rapid transit, with our bus priority, we're also putting in bus lanes with these transitional projects. We really hope to help people choose better low carbon options when they move around the city, unless they have to drive, and then that there'll be space for those.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Scott has asked why this is going ahead with no consultation with local businesses. I might again start with Vida on that one.
Yeah, so there has been numerous consultations up till here, but here we're really beginning to see a whole lot of strategy that has been consulted on put into action. So through the long-term plan, as I spoke about earlier, there was a wide consultation where our councillors chose to invest in a bike network over the next 10 years. We've also, with the bike network plan, been out and consulted for 6 weeks. And there has been other consultations in the past around this. So with these projects in particular, we're wanting to consult around the lived experience and understand data around how these work. So we'll be consulting once they're in place, but prior to that, we have been doing pre-engagement with key stakeholders such as businesses to make sure that where we can work with them on the concerns they have around operational matters. But parking, which was typically one of the concerns, that is not something that we are going to be able to maintain the status quo on these routes.
Cool, thanks, Vida. Does anyone else want to jump? No, everyone's cool. Nailed it. So Leah is asking, how will this proposal affect my home and keep our young people safe walking to school? Where will residents park safely? So a couple of questions in there. Does anyone want to take that one? Vida?
Yep, and I might actually call on some of the team for this one, but I guess what we're trying to do, our transport hierarchy at Wellington City Council, our pedestrians are at the top of that. They're the most vulnerable street users. So where we can, we're also making pedestrian improvements, and especially the bike network has also been made to connect our schools to the local centres so that children can get around by bike and walking and scooting safer. So Hugh, I think you might have something to say here as well.
Thanks, Vida. Yeah, I was just going to say that through the safety audits and accessibility audits that we've had done so far, it's been recognised that providing facilities for people on bikes makes it safer for people walking because it allows them that space to ride on the road, which leaves the footpath clear for pedestrians. And so that's the big improvement for pedestrians through this project. And where we can, like the raised crossing on the slip lane at the terrace, we're trying to make those crossings safer as well. And so for the parking, where some residents' parking has been relocated to side streets, and that commuter parking has been less priority as part of the parking plan. So where residents' parking has been affected, we have tried to mitigate that on other areas that are close by.
Cool, thanks, Hugh. We've also got various people asking with regard to the Newtown route. How will people on bikes get around the Basin Reserve? I'll put that one to Renee.
Yep, so through the Basin Reserve, what will happen is most of the time people on bikes and pedestrians will go through the Basin Reserve on the shared path as they currently do. When an event is occurring, there is traffic management plans that are put in place for those events that will direct people around the outside, around the left of the Basin Reserve. That will be a shared bike and pedestrian facility during those events only. Unfortunately, there isn't sufficient room on the road corridor to have a separated bike lane and footpath around the basin. So it won't be all the time, but when there's events, they'll go around. But most of the time, cyclists and pedestrians will go through the Basin Reserve.
Awesome.
I could just add in there, I guess as part of the longer term options for the mass rapid transit state highway improvements project, and the options there. There are that is an area that is being looked at for improved facilities longer term. Nothing has been decided as yet.
Great, thanks, Charlene. We've got Jill asking with regard to the Newtown route, why doesn't the bike lane go through the shops up to the zoo and the Bear and Paw turn off, plus up to Main Street up Main Street to Daniel and Wilson? So I thought maybe Vida and Charlene could tag team on that one.
Yep, I can start off with that. So the bike network plan, which was adopted last Thursday, has put in a secondary route which goes through to the zoo, and then also up to Russell Terrace, up to Swiss. So we'll be looking at that, and we need to understand the phasing. We still haven't scheduled out all of the routes and when and how they're going to be delivered, but there will need to, that is a secondary route on the bike network plan. One of the things that we also, as I spoke about in my presentation, was that we need to think about those local contexts and understand what is best for each route. So as we get to that, we'll need to understand how we move through that space, and if it's a combination of different streets or how it works. So we'll be getting to that. Good points.
And yeah, the mass rapid transit options that some travel through to Island Bay, and some in various forms. So there are options that are still being investigated and the feedback reviewed for the mass rapid transit project.
Awesome, thank you. David is asking with regard to the Botanical Gardens route, how does this plan affect parking for the Botanic Gardens? And I'll put that one to Renee. You might be able to give us some insight there.
Cool, yeah, so we will be removing parking all down the Bowen Street and on Tinakori Road from the Botanic Gardens to the Bowen Street intersection. As we have done parking surveys and a parking management plan for these areas, and that does identify that most of the parks along Bowen Street are commuter parks. So what we're really trying to do is improve the bike facilities and bus facilities so that people can try and use these other ways of commuting rather than bringing in their cars into the city.
Cool, thanks Renee. I can just see a follow-up question that relates to that one. Dan asking, with the parking going on Bowen Street, will people park in other streets in other suburbs instead?
Yeah, so that is probably likely to happen. That is getting pushing out some of those commuter parkings to other areas, and we will continue to monitor that and see if any additional changes need to be made to any of the surrounding streets based on the response of the commuters as a result of removing the parking on Bowen Street.
Cool, thank you. Vida, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Renee, we've also been working closely with the Botanical Gardens teams to understand what those visitor needs are for parking, and we'll be monitoring that, and that will be part of our evaluation, because we know there's a lot of families that go there during the day, and retired people and other that you like to use it. So we'll be looking at that and making sure that's working as best as possible as we go.
All right. We have various people asking questions about safety at bus stops, understandably, with the changes. So how will you keep pedestrians safe when boarding or getting off buses with scooters and bikes coming up onto the footpath in front of them? Again, maybe Renee, you can shed some insight on that one.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and we will be coming out with lots of educational videos and information about how these bus stops will work. But our design has been created to make it as safe as possible, because we understand there is that pedestrian and cyclist conflict point. So what we will have is we'll have ramps up onto the platform, which will slow down cyclists. Also, the road markings and signage will indicate that there is this area to be aware of and to slow down. So there'll be the red road markings, and also the existing pedestrian black and white stripes to indicate that pedestrians do have priority when crossing from getting on and off the bus across the cycleway to the footpath. There is also a section for bus passengers to get on and off safely and be able to see if any cyclists are in the vicinity before crossing onto the footpath. But yeah, pedestrians definitely do have right of way in crossing these bus platforms, and the road markings and signage and educational work will make this really clear. So we don't see there to be any issues, but we will continue to monitor and how these are working.
Yeah, sorry, Renee, just to add to that, I was going to say, the bus stops have been very clearly highlighted through the accessibility audit as something that we want to keep an eye on how they're working. And so they're going to be a new process for us in that we're not going to be doing, well, we are doing an accessibility audit on the design, but we're doing a follow-up accessibility audit on the experience of people through those bus stops. So yeah, really highlighted how important those areas are for these projects.
Awesome, that's really cool to hear, Hugh, and important, yeah, that people are able to feed back about their experience, because they are a new kind of design for Wellington, aren't they? Yeah. The question that is on everybody's lips, Natalie, thank you for asking. When will the routes be ready to trial, particularly with regard to the Newtown route? Renee, as the project manager, you probably got an inside word on that.
Yes. So yes, what will happen is, yeah, we're starting to install from April to around June for the first section from the hospital to the basin. So that section will be all ready to go by June, July. Then we'll be going on to do from the basin to the waterfront, which will go from July to August. So the whole Newtown route will be open for everyone to use in August, but that first section will hopefully be done a bit before that. But like I said, that is subject to delays due to COVID, unfortunately, but we're trying our best to get it in as soon as possible. So those are the dates we're looking at the moment.
Cool, thank you. Lockie has asked, is the design team looking at protected intersection designs such as those in Ottawa and the Netherlands? Maybe I'll put that one to Renee, and maybe Charlene can follow on.
Yep. So yeah, we do definitely look at research and what is happening all over the world and in other cities throughout New Zealand, and trying to get the best outcomes we can. So most of our intersections for the transitional project and the scope of this work, we can't have those fully separated intersections just due to the constraints at those intersections. However, along Cambridge Terrace with the bidirectional cycleway, that will be fully separated throughout the intersections. So there will be separate phasing for the cyclists to go through with no conflict with vehicles. So it will be definitely safe through those intersections.
Yeah, and I guess the permanent solutions that we'll be looking at, I guess the team doing the transitional projects, that they have encountered some constraints, but being able to do things in a quick way. So anything that we can make a permanence, that we can look into from a permanent perspective, where we can kind of maybe play with intersections a bit more, then we will definitely look at those options when we are doing our business case work.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll just add to that it's really important that you tell us about these experiences so we know about that through these projects.
Great, thank you. Hugh is asking with regard to the Newtown, not Hugh Wilson, I presume. I am presuming though. Maybe Hugh Wilson is asking himself a question. Hugh from Newtown is asking, what signs and communication will there be for drivers so they don't turn from Vivian Street onto the new bike lane on Cambridge Terrace? Renee, sorry, you're getting hammered here, but
No,
you're probably able to give us some insight on that one.
yeah, so we will ensure the signal phasing and the road markings make it really clear that where the cycleway is and where the cars will have to drive. So yeah, it should be really obvious. We have separators, so physical separators along the cycle route. So there'll be black and white hit sticks with base separators as well, alongside the green road markings and the cycle symbols and signs. So it will be really clear where the cycleway is and where the cars will need to navigate through any intersection. So yeah, it's very unlikely that a car will turn into that cycleway.
Great, thank you. Ellie from Newtown is asking, about Newtown. Who knows if Ellie's from Newtown? Sorry, Ellie. Presumptions again. How will we discourage or prevent pedestrians from walking on the bike lanes? I'll put that one to Hugh.
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. So as we've mentioned a couple of times, we're not changing the curbs as part of these projects, so there will still be a physical separation between the bike lane or the shared bus and bike lane and the footpath. So any pedestrian that wanted to walk in the bike lane would need to step down off the curb. So there's a really clear delineation of, the space and who should be using that space. And also, as well as sort of trying to improve those crossings where we can as well. So making it easier and safer for pedestrians to cross where they want to, that isn't kind of mid-block across a cycle lane and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's still that really clear delineation that everybody is used to of a gutter, essentially, a curb between the bike lane and the footpath.
Great, thank you. So Thomas is asking, what, if any, action is being taken to stop e-scooters from being left scattered over the footpath? Hugh, you're on a roll here. Might hand that one to you.
Yeah, thanks. So I think through our experience with e-scooters, we've identified that sort of parking is the biggest issue with e-scooters. They get ridden typically pretty well. And so we're working quite hard with the operators to identify ways that we can improve them, and sort of through those placemaking opportunities that Renee was talking about, we're able to have parking for e-scooters and bikes, and making those places destinations where people want to go, so they won't actually want to stop halfway, they'll actually want to get to those places. And as the technology improves with e-scooters, this sort of stuff becomes a lot easier. So we can do what's called geofence areas with more accuracy, which makes it impossible for people to park e-scooters in certain areas. And particularly for these routes, which are out of the CBD and they don't have the tall buildings, we are able to be a bit more accurate. So we've got a really close working relationship with the e-scooter operators. And if things, if we start to notice things happening, we can action them really, really quickly. So definitely part of that monitoring that we'll be keeping an eye on.
Great, thanks, Hugh. Renee, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say on e-scooters, they also can use the cycle lane. So we are really encouraging the cycle lanes aren't just for cyclists, but also all micromobility. So skateboards and scooters. So we're really trying to encourage them to get off the footpath and use these safe cycling facilities, which will improve it for pedestrians as well.
Awesome, thank you, Renee. I just want to take a moment. I realise that it's 8:25, so we have 5 minutes left in the scheduled meeting, but we still have a stack of questions to get through. And so I'm thinking, if everyone is okay, panelists, take a drink. Maybe we keep going for an extra kind of 10 minutes just to kind of get through a few more of these questions, if that's all right with everyone. It's great to see such lively engagement from the participants. And again, thank you everyone for coming along. We'll try and hammer out as many questions as we can in the next kind of 15 minutes. All right, Mark. Thank you. Mark in Newtown is concerned about the bus layover outside 25 Cambridge Terrace. That will be at the entrance to the building. So why is the bus parking going in this location and what impact will that have? Renee, I think that's probably a you.
Yep. So we have had quite a lot of engagement with Metlink and Greater Wellington Regional Council on the bus layover spaces. So they're finding they have a real demand for the bus layover spaces, just with their rules and regulations around how often bus drivers need to have breaks to be able to go to the toilet and things like that. Also, for them to ensure they are on time for their routes, that most of them do depart on Place for those, especially in the peak hours. So in order for the buses to be able to operate safely and efficiently, they do need that bus layover space. So we are unfortunately having to remove it along the median island where some buses currently park. And so that has been identified as the most suitable location. And we have been working with some of the businesses there, and we are going to make it a bus layover between particular hours, and then outside of those hours it is loading zones. So we are trying to make it work as best as possible, but that has been identified as the best bus layover space, and we have been looking around and are doing traffic resolutions as well for additional bus layover space on Chapers Street.
Great, thanks Renee. Laura is asking regarding the Newtown route, why is all the parking being removed on Ridderford Street and how will this affect businesses? Vida, I'll look back to you on that one.
Yep, so this is especially, and I presume this is where Laura is talking about, is the by the John Street intersection at that northern end of Ridderford Street. And this is probably the narrowest section of this corridor, especially, and it's a complicated intersection where we've got a multiple number of roads merging and meeting, and then we've got the hospital there, of course, as well, which is a really important destination for emergency services. So what we are doing there currently there is around 6 short-term parking spaces. They do need to be removed in this project, but Countdown on Adelaide Road has public parking spaces, and also the hospital, the New Children's Hospital, which will be opening in April about the same time as this project. They have around 30 to 50 new car parking spaces, which the first 20 minutes are free, and that's about 150 metres from these shops, so within a short walking distance. So we're working closely with the hospital, understanding those things. But I do understand that this is a change for those businesses, and we're trying to work through and help where we can with signage and other things to make this really clear that there is parking available nearby.
Cool, thanks Vida. Andrew is wondering, has the council considered targeted advertising to businesses on the research showing that cycleways and pedestrian friendly infrastructure increases business compared to on-street parking? Vida, you're probably best placed again.
Yep, so there is a lot of data from around the world, also from Auckland. We've seen Fort Street, which saw a significant increase, especially in hospitality businesses when they made their areas more pedestrian friendly and high street. So there's a lot of really great data, and what we hope to collect, especially as well with these first projects, is understand what these effects are in a Wellington context, so we can build on that. But yes, I agree, definitely a lot of the evidence that we're seeing is showing that cyclists also love to buy things, and making connected cycle routes to get there is really beneficial, especially for smaller local businesses.
Great, thank you. Liam is wondering, with regard to the Newtown route, are the designs accessible for people in wheelchairs? Renee, maybe Renee and Hugh could speak on that one.
Yeah, so we have done an accessibility audit, which we definitely are. It is definitely on our mind to make these routes as accessible as possible. So the bus stops and things like that will definitely have ramps and have tactile pavers and things like that. all along the route. There'll be increase in tactile pavers and other ramps for wheelchair users.
Yeah, and as Renee said before, we're really encouraging people on all devices to use these lanes, and we're aware that there are a variety of accessibility devices, and so we've got a working group that includes accessibility advocates, and so hopefully working with them, we're going to be able to experience how some of those users interact with these facilities, be able to make those changes as well. So that's one opportunity we've identified to do that.
Great, thanks, Hugh. Anne is asking, how will we monitor the number of people using the cycleways? Hugh, I think that's one for you.
Yeah, it's really important to understand if people are using these. So we've got a network of counters that are already in place, and they've been counting since 2018. So we've got a pretty good idea of what's happening out on the network already, and some of those counters are in locations on these routes. We're also working with a local, a New Zealand-based company to do some temporary monitoring of intersections, and they do counts as well. And so throughout the monitoring period of the projects, we'll be able to check back in regularly and understand how the use of these facilities is changing across all modes. So yeah.
Cool, sounds thorough and exciting. We've got an anonymous question here regarding the Botanical Gardens route. How will cyclists and cars navigate the Tinakori and Bowen Street intersection? Renee, any thoughts?
Yep, so at the Tinakori Bowen Street intersection, there will be advanced stop boxes for cyclists. So they will transition into the lane, cyclists, and go into the advanced stop boxes to get around that corner. I'm not sure if Charlene has alternative plans for when they come through if Let's Get Wellington moving, but it is a complex intersection, so it can't be a separated facility all the way around for cyclists, unfortunately. They do need to share the lane in that section.
Yeah, I guess we're at early stages, and the whole purpose of us working closely together is in these two projects is to make sure that the Let's Get Wellington moving project for Bowen Street in particular learns and gets the feedback from the transitional project, so that we make sure our design addresses some of those any issues that haven't maybe worked properly, but could do with some improvements that we may be able to work on. So that's definitely one of the areas that we will look at is that intersection and how it works. I guess the aim of our work is that it is a permanent solution, so it will look a bit different to the transitional projects and be there to last a long time. So we'll need to look at that closely. But yeah, we are keen to see the transitional project implemented so that we can learn those lessons and get the feedback.
Great. All right, we'll just go to our final question now. From Patrick, what are the best ways for bike advocates to help? Vida, maybe you can have a hoon on that.
Yeah, I'll lead off and team jump in if there's anything in particular like to add. I guess for us, we're really excited about getting these routes in. So come and trial them once they're in and tell us how they're working, and spend time talking to people about the benefits of them and get new users onto them where you can. Encourage other people to try it, those that have been nervous about cycling due to safety and other concerns. Before they get in, I guess as well, it's really important that you are out there talking about it, about why this is important to you, why this is important for your whānau, how creating great cycling facilities and bike and bus lanes help everybody and create a less congested city. And also make sure, you know, our communities are our beating hearts. So get out there and support your local communities. Work with people, get your kids out around biking, and go in and buy things at your local businesses. Also with COVID, we know that a lot of our local businesses are finding it hard. So yeah, get out there and get amongst it.
Thanks, Vida. Some good advice. I'm actually just going to sneak in just a really easy question, just a little bit naughty, but I think it's an important question. We've got a question, Renee, for you. Whether with the bus platforms, will they be easily negotiated by people in wheelchairs in terms of the platforms being level with the bus doors?
Yeah. So it's kind of like acting like the curb. So the buses can come down against them like they would a curb. So it functions the same.
Okay, great. That end. Cool. Thank you so much, panel, for all of your awesome mahi, and participants for hanging in there. I know we've gone over time, and it's been really heartening to see such spirited and great engagement from people around these exciting new routes. So yeah, thank you very much. Panelists, you can turn your cameras off now, and we'll just, obviously we've talked a lot about the projects and what's kind of, you know, a bit of detail around that. But if you want to find out more about the projects, there's a lot of really useful information on the transportprojects.org.nz website, and you can drill down into all sorts of different detail. There's kind of supporting documents which include parking management. You can understand the option analysis and things like that. It's really great information in there. So I recommend you head over to transportprojects.org.nz and dig into some of the detail there. And of course, we want you to stay in touch. We really want to hear from you about these projects. So if you want to sign up for regular updates, you can do that at Transport Projects. Or if you have any questions, and like I said earlier, we've been absolutely hammered. Yes. We've been absolutely hammered with questions tonight, so unfortunately we haven't been able to answer all of them, but I really encourage you to get in touch with us at info@wcc.gov.nz with your question if your question hasn't been answered. Yeah, and we'll do our best to get back to you. You can also reach out to your local ward councillor to connect about any interest or concerns you have about the route. We're just going to do a 1-second poll just to finish off, because we're a little bit curious to check the sentiment again. So knowing a bit more about these projects now, how are you feeling about the changes? Hopefully knowing a bit more. Those who have hung in here for 1 hour and 9 minutes, sticker-ins, great. Okay, so we've got 70%, well, we've got 37 people responding. The 70% are excited, get on with it. 5% upper middling, 3% not sure, 3% lower middling, and 19% still concerned and not looking forward to the changes. So yeah, like I say, please, thank you for those, and please do take the time to get in touch with us at info@wcc.gov.nz or reach out to your local councillor. Yeah, and that brings us to the end of our session this evening. Thank you so much, like I said, for joining us and taking the time. I hope you learned something about these exciting new routes. And yeah, we look forward to getting them on the ground and hearing from you about your experience with them. So now we'll just close out the session with a karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātea, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua. I te ara takatū, koia rā I rongo, whakaaria ake ki runga. Kia wātea, ai rā, kua wātea. Kia ora koutou, pō Māria,